afternoon. And if anyone from Australia has joined us, it might be evening for them already. So happy and lovely sustainable day to all of you wherever you are in the world. My name is Matthias Gelber. I am collaborating with uHoo on running interesting webinars. And today we have a super exciting topic. We will look at a wide range of up-to-date issues covering sustainability, life sciences, healthy buildings, and ESG. There's a lot going on in our built environment, real estate markets that most of us are working with. And those topics are really trending topics, particularly now after the COVID reality. Some countries are bringing people back into their offices. We have the ESG investment trend, the ESG rating that is impacting increasingly, particularly listed companies. So we will try and look at the synergies between these themes and what are the things that we can learn from and implement to make our properties and real estate sector more sustainable, more successful, and more healthy. So without further ado, I would like to start off with a little poll just to get us all engaged at the beginning, to get your views. This is our poll that we just want to kick off with, focusing on ESG. Here are the questions. In your opinion, obviously this depends a little bit on what sector you are in specifically. What is the most important factor or focus of ESG investment and stewardship strategies in a post-COVID business environment? Is it environment that we should focus on, social, governance, equal weighting for all three, or you're not so sure, you don't know? What is your opinion? What is your view on this? Please click one of the boxes for us to get a good gauge from the audience where we are and what are your thoughts. Okay, we have already 70% of people answered the question. That's great. There's excellent participation here in our group without me having to kind of engage you too proactively. We are close to 80%. Let me end above 80%. I'll end the poll and share the results with you. As expected, the top rated one is equal weighting for all three. Quite a big number of people as well, 29%, actually shared that they think environment should be the biggest priority. I mean, we have climate change, maybe an irreversible threat looming over us that could have an even bigger impact than COVID. And then social, 13%, very high as well. Health is a very new focus and mega trend inside of our buildings, but nobody clicked governance or don't know. So that's an interesting observation as well. So let me stop sharing the results and start off with our first speaker, who comes from the Philippines, represents BDO Unibank, a very well-known bank here in the Philippines. My wife is banking with BDO, and me potentially as well in the future when I open up my second bank account. So, and maybe your presentation will add to that today. Marla Garin Alvarez is the VP for Sustainability, and she will share with us today what's happening on the sustainable finance front, banks, the mega trends in that sector. Over to you, Marla. Welcome to our session today. You're still muted.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Matthias. And yes, one of my goals whenever I make presentations is to convince people to either apply in the company I'm with, or in this case, open an account in the bank. So I will check with you on that goal later after this session. So thank you for having me and for allowing me to share our initiatives on sustainability at BDO Unibank. So conscious of the time that we have and our multinational audience and multicultural audience, let me proceed to the next slide. So BDO Unibank is a full-service universal bank for those of you who are not familiar. We provide services in terms of commercial banking, investment banking, private banking, leasing and financing, and a whole gamut of financial services. We are the country's largest bank in terms of resources, customer loans, deposits, as well as distribution network. Currently, we have 1,427 branches nationwide in the Philippines, over 4,400 ATMs. I think that most of you always go to the BDO ATMs because we make sure that our ATMs are always full of cash. And we have a total asset of 3.3 trillion pesos, or $66.55 billion. We are part of the SM Group, the SM Investments Corporation conglomerate, which Filipinos would be familiar with. It's the largest and most successful conglomerate in the country. We're into malls, real estate, property development, and financial services. But having said that, even the bank, BDO, may be considered into property because we have close to 300 properties as a result of mergers and acquisitions of other banks in the bank's history. So we are also a conglomerate. It's not just the Unibank. We also have the BDO Network Bank, which focuses on micro, small, and medium enterprises. And then there's the private bank and the Capital and Investments Bank, and of course, the BDO Foundation. So that's who we are. Now, in terms of sustainability, for us, it's a legacy, and it starts with the founder of the SM Group, the late Henry C. Sr., whose legacy is always keeping in mind that for all the SM companies, business growth and social development should go hand in hand. And so there has always been that corporate social responsibility component, which accounts for the social part. And over the years, we have evolved and grown that to also include good corporate governance, environmental protection, and conservation. And given our size and scope, we realized that the SM group of companies has a very significant role in terms of our impact, in terms of our footprint and access to millions of Filipinos and communities, and the opportunity for us to drive national development and create value. And we signed the UN Global Compact in 2019 and sponsored the GRI conference in the same year. We would have done the same in 2020, except for COVID. Now, this is our sustainability philosophy at BDO. We seek to achieve strategic resilience by incorporating sustainability in the way that we do business. We aim to embed sustainability principles when making decisions, assessing relationships across our stakeholders, and creating products. And briefly, just to show everyone, this is how we uphold and what we support in terms of the UN Global Compact and the UN SDGs. Now, specific to our sustainability strategies, we have 5. And these are around product sustainability, where we commit to develop products and services that are financially inclusive, particularly for the unbanked, of which in the Philippines, out of the 108 million or so population, 52.8 remain unbanked, and the underserved in terms of financial services, which is at around 10.8 million. So clearly still a lot of ground to cover, and still a great need to be more financially inclusive for the rest of the population. For our sustainability contribution strategy, which I will focus on more for this purpose, it's really supporting national economic goals in terms of impact financing, or what we initially called sustainable finance, and financial inclusion. And then there's the human capital strategy, and there is also the disaster response, governance-based sustainability strategy. So let me just focus on sustainability contribution strategy. So we have been into sustainable finance for the past 10 to 11 years. We started in 2010 with a partnership with the International Finance Corporation, which is the private arm of the World Bank Group. And with their help, we were the first private bank to develop and adopt a social environmental management system policy, which was aimed at facilitating loans for clean and renewable energy sources as early as 2010. Now, as part of building capacity for that, we created our BDO Sustainable Finance Desk in the same year, mainly for market awareness and for education, training our people on sustainable energy, green energy, renewable energy. And later on, this was expanded to include other types of environmental focus as well, such as green buildings, energy efficiency, climate mitigation, and overall to assess their risk in terms of environment and social impact. So in 2019, we were able to finance a total of over 158 billion pesos. But in 2020, and this is something that we have yet to share in our sustainability report for this year, uh, this rose to 400.9 billion pesos, or an equivalent of 8.3 billion in total sustainable finance. Now, one other best practice that I'd like to share is that we offered the first green bond in the Philippine banking industry, and was able to generate a total of 150 million US dollars that opened this funding channel in the country and in the region as well. And other banks followed this example in the succeeding years, given the success that we were able to show with this green bond. So let me share with you the first of our green building financing. So this is the Zwillig building, which is the first green building in the Philippines to earn a platinum certification on LEED, or Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, way back 2012. And this is financed by BDO, of course, and it has these features, which at the time were considered fairly pioneering and new for the sector, and in subsequent years were followed by other new developments in the country. This building has since received numerous international and regional awards for its green design. Next in our success stories is Star Mall in Alabang for its energy efficiency. So what we did for Star Mall is to fund the retrofit of their old aircon system to a newer, more energy efficient, with better air quality and water-cooled centralized system. And the result of that is monthly cost savings of 3 million in electricity, obviously cleaner air quality, as in you can really feel and see the difference, and increased customer flow for the mall and its tenants, because people felt the difference and started going there as a preferred mall over the others in the same area. And if you know Filipinos, we're very particular about malls. We love malls, so this is considered a big thing to be able to do this. And finally, this is the Exquadra Tower, which is pre-certified gold but aiming for platinum certification. And Exquadra was built before the pandemic, just shortly before January 2020. But because it's a green and sustainable building, it already met the safety protocols for COVID. So it has a fresh air exchange system that changes the air every 8.5 minutes. It has contactless building features like facial ID detection, and elevator access. Same with the parking. It has a facial recognition software. It has an automated elevator assignment system, so you can immediately limit the number of passengers for each car. And it even has a locker system that provides automated notifications for tenants. So no need for messengers to come up to your floor or for you to meet them downstairs, because it's all automated and it's all high tech. Apart from that, it has the usual, it also has a lot of high-tech environmental features, but for purposes, of COVID protocols, this is the building that really meets that and anticipated that and has put it to good use. Now, for our own building, our BDO Corporate Ortigas is also certified. Um, it's equipped with state-of-the-art rainwater system. It has our own sewage treatment facility. And again, during COVID, it's one of the easier buildings to manage and establish COVID protocols for, because it already has a lot of high-tech systems in place that we were able to enhance to better protect our employees. Now, from the example that I've shared with you on BDO, let me just go macro for a bit and share that uh, the Central Bank of the Philippines, or Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, has mandated sustainability reporting and a sustainable finance framework as of May 2020. And what that means is it expects all banks to provide a transition plan that will implement a transition to a sustainable finance framework within a span of 3 years. That's from 2021 to 2023. And initially, while we ourselves define sustainable finance as impact financing or financing renewable energy sources or clean energy, this has been extended in terms of a definition into embedding sustainability in all our business processes, our strategies, direction, policies, systems. So it's not just the lending side anymore, it's the entirety of the bank's operations. And we are going through this transition planning now, with the end in mind of submitting our transition plan to our board for approval this May and submitting it to the BSP in June. And just to let you know, the same thing is happening throughout ASEAN. So other countries, other central banks in other countries in ASEAN are also looking at the same regulatory mandates. And sustainable finance has really become an urgent priority in terms of driving our goal for net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So what are your key takeaways here? So when you look at the financial services and banks in particular, one of the data points that you need to know is that according to the UN, the estimated annual cost of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 is 1 to 2 trillion. And this is above the pledges that have already been given by countries and companies. So what does that mean? So clearly there is a need to engage the financial industry to finance this, and there's a huge need to leverage financing. Now, within the industry, we are getting a lot of pressures from investors, from regulators, and from customers, from society, driving pressure for banks to embed sustainable finance in the way that we do business. And for investors in particular, there is a very strong preference for companies that score highly in terms of their ESG ratings. So there are different levels of ratings, and it's one of the investment decisions that are critical, whether an investor would provide additional funding or invest more or take out their investment in companies and in banks. Now, ESG in terms of the bank talks about two things. There is the embedding of ESG criteria in business decisions and operations, which is more internal to the bank or to the company. And the second one for the bank, it's investing to a net zero carbon world. So pursuing sustainable finance. And when we look at this now, we look at both the risks and opportunities. Initially, it seems like there is a lot of risk because there's a lot of money involved. There are what we call transition risks in terms of exposure to coal, for example. For the bank in particular, how much have we financed in terms of coal projects? How do we get out of that? How do we mitigate that change? But there are opportunities that we see as well. And there's a need to address both the physical and transition risk so that we're able to identify what opportunities it will bring for the bank. And finally, in the long run, it really is about whether you have what it takes to survive. And what will be the decision factor for the bank and for other companies and other in the financial institution is, do you have the vision and do you have the capabilities to pursue ESG and really leverage your ESG impact to be able to help in the overall climate change mitigation for the planet, and at the same time ensure the survival and sustainability of your business. And that's all for me.
All
Thank you.
right, Marla, thank you so much for an excellent and exciting case study. We are getting questions coming in, but I'll park them till later. So we go through our speakers first. And for those of you that are here in the Philippines, if you have seen the Star Mall before the green loan retrofit and after and experienced it, amazing what a difference that made. And I'm not surprised that the masses came back again because it felt completely different after that green loan in action. So excellent examples here. Next one up is Jojo Salas. He is the Director for Global Research and Business Development, APAC, at the leading real estate companies. It's a group of companies internationally operating, and he is looking at responsible real estate investment. What is the outlook for ESG? Over to you, Jojo.
Thank you, Matthias. Good day, everyone. And thank you, Marla, for that very extensive presentation on banks and finance. Let me pull out my presentation and share my screen. Share. There you go. And okay, can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thanks again, Matthias. So I'll be handling responsible real estate investing and outlook for ESG and real estate post-COVID. It's a big topic, but I'll focus on mainly the experiences of a membership network all over the world, which is our company, leading real estate companies of the world. So I'll dive into it. So in a nutshell, our company, leading real estate companies of the world, or simply leading RE, we're composed of 550 plus member companies worldwide in over 70 countries. So in a nutshell, that's our company. But it's not about us. So it's about ESG and, of course, our involvement, especially post-COVID. So this is timely because what we did, because of the lockdowns all over the world, so we measured the impact on prices. And if this was done late last year, and actually we're updating our housing price index worldwide. And if you would notice, look at the green ones per region, Asia Pacific, Canada, Latin America, down the line. The green in the donut would be prices are increasing. And the orange and red one, prices are decreasing. Of course, the deeper the color, the higher the increase. In US and Canada, pretty much they experience price increases, mainly because, yes, some states, some provinces experienced lockdown, but after that one, there was a pent-up demand for housing. So right now in the US and Canada, well, not all markets, but majority of the markets, they have shortage in supply. In Asia Pacific, most of the markets experience decreasing in prices. In the Philippines, I think it's prices are holding up, but most markets, especially tourist-driven markets, prices are decreased. But the green ones, these are Australia and New Zealand, and both countries are experiencing shortage in supply as well. But more importantly, I have a totally separate presentation of this one. I just want to paint the backdrop and the demand, the pent-up demand for housing. So mainly because of the pandemic, of course, governments have been gearing their fiscal and monetary policies to support markets, economies, and even real estate and housing industries. And we know we will recover, definitely. Everyone is expecting that one, but expect that it would be uneven per country, per region, per city, even per building. Because depending on the tenant mix, whether they are BPOs, banks, lawyers, depending on the tenant mix of a building. So it would be really uneven. Then, of course, more importantly, all over the world, there would be a reevaluation of uh, tastes and preferences. And we know that there's a marked demand for bigger space, for less density developments. So I think that's sort of like an overall theme wherever you go, bigger space. And then, of course, buyers and real estate actors are more comfortable doing deals, accepting payment online. So the digitalization of the industry. Now, let's dive into uh, the growth. This is a projection by International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group. It was done 2019, so pre-COVID. But if you would notice, well, of course, their projection then it would reach 24.7 trillion US dollars by 2030. Now the debate is, would this still hold, or because of the pandemic, would it slow down? I think perhaps it would slow down a bit, but again, the trend has been whether there would be recalibration in the office space, office usage, whether they would work from home. I think the demand would be bigger space. So yes, there would be adjustment in terms of the time, in terms of the value of the real estate investment, but for sure, the growth would be there. So that would be an opportunity and a challenge as well. So in terms of outlook, pros and cons. So I'm using red for cons. Of course, right now, based on IFC's estimates, basically the building sectors worldwide is consuming more than half of all electricity, mainly for heating, for cooling, for lights. And again, of course, there are many ways on how to compute for the greenhouse gases, but based on IFC's estimates, pretty much around 28% of energy-related GHG emissions are uh, due to the building sector worldwide. So that's, of course, negative, but then we will look at the opportunity. And apart from the dollar value that I mentioned a while ago, in terms of floor area, IFC is estimating that it will double in 40 years, or roughly around 2060. Again, this may adjust, but there are compelling reasons that because of the demand for bigger space, whether at home, in the office, whether logistics, then pretty much footprint-wise, there will be an increase in the next 30, 40, even 50 years. So now, what would be the positive outlook? Of course, there will be opportunities, opportunity to construct green buildings. And within the network, as I said, we're comprised of more than 550 members, member companies worldwide in 70 countries. It's an opportunity and a challenge at the same time. One, because of the various regulations, laws, even targets per country, per state. Then coming up with parameters is already a challenge. But in terms of opportunity, number one, so we have within the network, we have basically three. So one's awareness, definitely within our company and within the network. And of course, I'm using IFC figures here again. Being aware that green buildings can reduce up to 37% of operating costs, which is really good. And our initial discussion with Matthias, of course, this is good. You can save on your recurring costs in terms of um, premium. If you sell, there would be higher selling prices. Then it would be faster in terms of velocity as well, sales velocity. Oops. Then in terms of wait a sec. Then in terms of, I cannot. Then in terms of occupancy, higher occupancy as high as 23%, and even in rentals, higher rent. Marla mentioned Zwillig. Actually, in my former company, my team prepared the highest and best use and pre-feasibility study of the Zwillig building. And we also did the leasing. And we were doing at least 10, even 15% higher rents because it was the first lead. And I think it was uh, planning stage, it was a pre-certified gold. When it was finished, it was platinum. So it was really an amazing experience for the Philippines, and of course for the developers and even the financing like a BDO. Now, this is a debate in terms of construction cost. So initially, the perception is if you put all of these green buildings, green criteria in place, it would be more expensive. Yes and no. It can be expensive, but based on the U.S. Green Building Council study of 146 buildings, these over 100 buildings, the average increase is just less than 2%. In fact, some of the runs that I saw, they're using, these are financial institutions, they're using 3% more compared to a traditional building. But IFC said, in fact, you can save on cost. And this is fantastic, but this is a separate study. The case study of DC Forensic Lab, it was 17% under budget. So of course, it's fantastic. But even using that less than 2% increase, so it's a compelling reason, I mean, to build green buildings. So that's what we want to promote. So our green lens within the network, we are using that one. So awareness, then coming up with a benchmark, a common benchmark. So this is the where that the challenge is, because we're in 70 plus countries, various states and provinces and jurisdictions. So we to be broad, they would be simpler. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And again, I asked Philippa, even Matthias, in terms of coming up with a multinational, multi jurisdictional parameters. Simple, but can be applied by a lot of countries, by a lot of companies. So we're coming. This is a sort of an ongoing process, and ultimately, by end of the year, we want to come up with a sustainable index, primarily to award markets, even cities. Of course, again, in coordination with green building councils, with rating agencies worldwide and per country. One is to recognize the different developers, institutions, and of course, real estate practitioners. So to recognize and give award. Basically, for now, we have the three sort of parameters that we are using: awareness, of course, then common benchmark, and our index. So hopefully, with that, we could help reduce our carbon footprint. With that, thank you very much. Back to you, Matthias.
I have
And
to
I
unmute myself. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
There you go.
Excellent. Great. And no surprise, both of you mentioned the Zulik building, a famous example. Just think about the branding benefit they had of being the first mover. And I've heard of people that said, yeah, no problem that we paid extra on the rental because we saved so much money on the energy bill as well in operations. And then if you look at the benefit of higher productivity. So, and yesterday I chaired a conference in Malaysia on energy efficiency. We got data from the IFC. Most of their edge buildings that were certified, the return on investment for the extra 20 to 40% energy efficiency was within a couple of months, less than 1 year. So you're right. If we do it right, Jojo, then the ROI is pretty good. Now, the focus so far has been on climate change and green buildings. Let's have the marriage of E&S, health, well-being, and economics. That is the headline of Philippa, all the way from London. Philippa is the director for Europe at EVORA, a very famous organization in the UK and expanding internationally, helping the real estate sector with all aspects of ESG. So, Philippa, we are looking forward to see how you're going to marry E&S. Over to you.
Thank you, Matthias. I'm just going to share my screen. She says, you would think by now I had enough practice doing this. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, perfect, but it's not exactly
about to
aligned
be.
yet in the middle. If you
It's coming,
press,
1 second. There's too many things popping up. There we go.
yes, perfect.
So I wanted to put a different or an additional flavor onto all of the fantastic comments that have been made already, and really try and remind us all that buildings don't exist for their own benefit. They exist for human benefit, whether that's a building that we live in or working, or even the increasing logistics that we see. It's all to drive the human engine. But I'd also remind us that we are the same mammal animal that we evolved hundreds of thousands of years ago. And while every generation likes to think that it's cleverer and better and smarter and wiser than the one before, we are still the same biped. We still have 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes. And we have almost not evolved at all since we lived out in nature and in the caves. Somehow we've decided that modern buildings are the way that we should be living. What's happened is, unfortunately, that a lot of the senses that we evolved with for smell and danger and hearing have actually been muted by the modern world, because now I can hear outside my lovely window in London the traffic of one of the main roads coming in from the airport, maybe some aeroplanes, although with lockdown, not so many of those. So our natural senses that told us what was good or bad for us, including taste and smell and touch, which are still there, are very much muted now by the modern world. And our buildings have a key place to both protect us, but also enhance our world. A bit about EVORA, but I'm not going to go into this. You will see those in the slides later. I just want to put this in context briefly. Of the 2021 World Economic Forum Risk Report, it's a fairly stark reminder of how important both humans and extreme weather, climate risk factors are really tying all in together as we come out of what has been an incredibly hard year for everybody and is not over yet. But I think the link in these is really important, whether it's mental health deterioration, and I would remind everyone that health and well-being includes both physical and mental health. And as Plato said many centuries ago, you cannot have a healthy mind without a healthy body, or the other way around. But you'll see that long-term and short-term risks are really linking together. So particularly for those in cyclone zones, if we see that the 5th one here is extreme weather, but also in the bottom left corner, the most likely long-term risk is also extreme weather. If you're a real estate investor, what does that mean? It means mitigating, managing, and being prepared for climate risk. And what that means actually for your real bottom line, along with all the other things you have to worry about coming about in COVID. This report is really incredibly insightful, and I have put the source in the bottom left here. I highly recommend falling into its multiple pages. There's lots of great graphics as well as to how all of this, and the reason I bring this image up repeatedly is the connection between everything, between both climate action failure and internal conflict, between involuntary migration and social security collapse. But within that is both the impact, as we've seen, on the human and its environment. So social cohesion erosion, you might say, well, what has that got to do with buildings? That has a lot to do with buildings. Buildings don't just exist in like a child, the way they draw them. The way a child draws a building, so you have maybe you have a tree and then you have a line and then it goes up over the building and it comes down the other side. And that is actually your carbon footprint, but we'll save that for another day. But buildings have an enormous impact, as we know, on their whole environment around them. And as an architect once said to me, he said, the biggest challenge for them now is to design the empty spaces between buildings, because that is actually a lot of the space that we occupy as humans, particularly in cities. And if we want people to come back into our buildings and into our cities, we have to remember that they are not just that line, they are everything that is around them and the value that they bring back. Climate action failure we've talked about, has not only an enormous impact on asset values, and with my private equity hat back on, of thinking about long-term risk in terms of valuation. And we've already talked about both transition risk and physical risk to those assets, but of course to people, an enormous impact. And whether it's immediate temperature or crazy weather challenges, we went from 25 degrees centigrade last week to -1 overnight 2 nights ago within 1 week. Something is going on. The livelihood crisis, we get into affordable housing and the equality of the E, S and G, and what are we going to do about social equality, but also in terms of that health and wellbeing equality. One of the areas I find particularly interesting and concerning is the right to clean air. I find it slightly strange that clean air should be the prevalence of people who can afford to live in nice air-conditioned buildings with filtration systems. I think at least clean air and clean water is a fairly fundamental human right, but what are we as the real estate community going to do about that? And then human environmental damage, obviously huge session to be had just on that. But I think, and we've already talked about some of the numbers in terms of our impact as an industry, we have a moral and fiduciary duty and a risk management duty now to ensure that the built environment mitigates and manages this big climate action and social impact coming. I just wanted to remind us in terms of a very philosophical approach to all of this. We've become, very human-centric, anthropocentric on the left, where we very much see ourselves at the top of the food chain. But it's much more holistic and I suppose long-term to think about ourselves much more in a circular view of the planet and how we are in it. And what is good for us actually ends up being good for the planet in the long term. But in the same way that what is good for the planet and everything that we impact is also enormously good for us. And a very tangible example of that is when we get into materials and what we put into our buildings. So before, if you wanted to build a house or a building, you had to go and find the stone and then hopefully have a sharp tool that you may have made yourself and dig it out of the ground. So that stone became very valuable to you because it was a natural resource that was provided by the earth, but you actually had to do something to it and then probably turn it into a shape that you could then put. Same with a tree. Our connection now to our materials is completely disconnected. In the world where we can go on Amazon and just buy something at a click, whether that's your own new cable that you need to charge your laptop, or whether that is 100,000 bricks to build a new building. We have lost the concept of what it actually takes to make those and how important they are as resources and how irreplaceable many of them are. If we had to go and get the components for our mobile phones out of the mountain ourselves, we would understand how toxic they are, how dangerous they are, and how limited they are. And maybe we'd think twice about what impact we have just in our own world. Now, if we extrapolate that up to what we do as real estate investors, the impact of every single building is enormous. Within this, what do we do about making our assets healthy? Well, I've put some bullet points here that I try not to read my slides out because you'll all fall asleep. But what does it mean for comfort and security? We are still very visual animals. We see with our eyes, and I know that's an obvious statement, but sometimes we forget that we see with our eyes. So what does comfort and security mean to tenants and occupiers coming back into a building? An example I give is in the past, we always wanted the building to be cleaned overnight. So we went home from the office and we came back magically in the morning and the fairies and the pixies had arrived and the building was beautifully clean. How about now, if we want people to feel safe, and this is a lot of psychology, wouldn't it be better to see that building being cleaned? Wouldn't you feel better to have the visual security of, oh yes, I don't mind lifting my keyboard up because I know it's being sanitized and I feel better about that. So I think coming out of this crisis in terms of real estate, both for humans and for value, and to encourage people back into the workplace or into any kind of built environment, is to think about, on a human scale, what do I need to make myself feel secure and better? a lot of that is about visualizing things that are otherwise invisible, including air quality, a monitor on the wall, some way of showing people that this building is actually safe and secure. There's a lot of other issues as well about turning what perhaps was before perfectly fine office, and I come from an office background, so forgive me for always using offices as the example, but will it be enough for just okay real estate now? Nothing wrong with it, nothing particularly special about it, it was priced accordingly. If you're trying to encourage people back into that building, there has to be more. And the way I like to use this, and it's a funny thing to put in a investment slide, I realize, but a sense of joy. We need something to alleviate what's been a very hard year for many people. And what does it mean to create a space for people that actually they want to escape into, not away from? Lots of jokes about escaping out of the office before, but actually if you put it in front of a design team and a construction team and said, I want this, or an operational team, I want this to be a space that people cannot wait to get out of bed and come to. Now you might laugh and think that's a little bit ridiculous, but why not? Why should we settle for anything less? If we're going to spend a lot of time in these buildings, then they should bring us a sense of joy and a sense of place, belonging, inclusion, and safety. And of course, my screen has gone to sleep. So if I put my finance hat back on, this is called value. You can put a fantastic building together and it can all work on the spreadsheet. But if people don't like that building, if it doesn't bring them a sense of pleasure, and especially now coming out of the crisis, engagement, it will still sit there empty. And this social bit here, which is a key driver as we come out of this, is a very complex issue. However, the good news is there are lots and lots of frameworks out there and tools which are holistic and can help you put some kind of strategy in place to what this means for your real estate. The bad news is there are lots and lots and lots of frameworks out there to choose from. It's not a simple issue. And one of the ones that we are working with at EVORA is the World Green Building Council's Health and Wellbeing Framework for Buildings. It is not a certification tool. I'm putting that out there straight now. It is a framework, and it is a way of putting some structure around what is an approach to a healthy and good building, as I like to call it in old-fashioned words. The reason we like this particularly is not only does it prioritize the human at the heart of this strategy, but it links this, and here is the marriage of the E and the S, the climate action piece, which you see here on the top left. And it's very important for us as EVORA and as practitioners that really only do ESG to make sure that as human beings, we advance forward in a holistic way. We're very, very good at going forward as human beings. And we occasionally, and I'm sure we all have examples, forget to look sideways. And we cannot come out of this crisis without taking action on climate action and on human health together, creating social value, changing people's behavior. So this is why we find this framework a very useful approach. I'm not going to go through each of these because I just simply don't have time, but I have put the links in, and you can certainly go and have a look at the framework there. The other reason we like it is inherently linked into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which a lot of our clients are using as a broad framework as to how to address their portfolios, and making sure that under each of these 17 goals, there are tangible actions underneath. It is not, and I cannot repeat this enough, it is not enough just to say you're aligned. You actually have to, as a business, understand what that means, and then use that circle as a virtuous circle to drive better and better performance as we go forward. Harmony with nature. Again, back to what I said right at the beginning. This is the world in which we evolved, and all the concrete and glass and shiny things around us, particularly there's lots of evidence in terms of what artificial lighting is doing to us, completely messing up our biorhythm, not enough vitamin D, so our entire hormonal system is not working properly. The impact of our built environment can be enormously positive on our health, and it can be enormously negative. But because we didn't evolve with all of the things around us and the shiny lights and all the noise, we don't actually understand the impact that this is having on us. And when I say that we should be making our buildings places to escape to, I always show people the ideal image of their holidays, although I'm not quite sure what's on the back of that wall. That's possibly not the nicest image of my holiday picture. But why do we kind of sigh when we look at this and go, oh, if only I was there? Why isn't this my office? Beautiful surroundings, but the biggest thing is that, and anyone here who works in hospitality will know this, which is the most expensive room in the hotel? It's the one with the private beach, and it's the one with a view of the sea. And no one thinks, when you go and look at that hotel list, to be like, oh, I can't afford the private suite with the 2 swimming pools and, you know, private at bed service and my own thing. But I don't particularly want to be the one with looking at the bins and the delivery part at the back of the hotel. And we don't question the price difference. So I think actually the hospitality industry has a lot to teach us about the importance of nature and what it means to be happy in a space. And if we transfer their knowledge into offices, I think we'll end up with spaces that look incredibly different and will bring some joy back into our lives. This is a hotel very close to me. I don't want to escape to this hotel. I'm just going to leave it at that. It does not bring me joy. This, however, I'd quite like to go to the office if it looked like this every day. Now, as you can probably tell from behind me, I love plants and they make me happy. There are lots of things that make lots of people happy, but it's about understanding that actually the happier we are, the more productive we are. And there is, I'm not going to go into details, but tons and tons now of evidence to say that where people thrive, they are more efficient. This, I mean, there's lots of research going on and lots of scientists doing this, but we know this. We know, we instinctively in our own homes find places where we have to read, we go to one place, where we have to work, we go to another place. If we want to relax, we go to a different place. We do it subconsciously without thinking. So the trick is to try and work out how we put that in consciously to our working environments so that we can thrive in those as well. And there's many ways to do this, but I know which one I would choose. I'll just leave it at that. The definition of value, I think, is very important in this. People used to ask me when sustainability was just the E part of this. Well, you know, we've talked already this morning about the cost savings and the benefits, but there is more to that in the word value. And I've had long decades of discussions and possibly arguments with valuers about how do you value additional? What is a good building? Now, asset managers will tell you, and investors will tell you, you know, a good building is lots of things that go into a spreadsheet. But the reason we still have architects is because there's lots of things that don't fit into a spreadsheet, because we are very visual mammals. So we like to be in different kinds of spaces. And you could put 2 buildings side by side that on paper look absolutely identical, but the one that brings people more joy, and I would certainly argue that contains more nature in it and more of the kind of environment in which we evolved, is the one that those tenants will instinctively sign on the dotted line for.
Can I ask you to wrap up quickly?
I am wrapping up. Philippa, this is my last one. So there are numbers, and we're starting to see these emerge, certainly from markets all over the world where there is more visibility in terms of how valuation is driven. But the really important one I wanted to pull out here is healthcare. Patient recovery times decreased by 8.5% with a 22% reduction in pain medication in buildings where there was a view of nature. Now, the medical industry works on a very, very strict cost basis. And if they have worked out that even putting a picture of a tree on a patient's room helps them recover faster, there is definitely some science in there. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Philippa, for a big picture vision and loads of evidence that the S part needs to be part of what we call a good building, and the returns will be great, even though we sometimes don't really measure them. But if we start looking at the details of productivity, less sick leave, and faster recovery in the medical industry, like what you showed us, the benefits are huge and tremendous. Now, the way we are running this today is we are keeping the Q&A open in terms of exact timing. I think originally we defined the time on the Zoom as 5 to 6:30, so we can stretch over the hour a little bit. But I want to, just before we go into the into the Q&A, do a little exit poll for those who might have to leave at the hour. If you want to follow up with any of the speakers, I will just give you the chance to identify that here. You can basically do multiple clicks here, whom you want to connect with or follow up with, and then we can pass that on to the speakers that have been involved here. Either Marla to open up a BDO account or know more about sustainable finance, Jojo to get his latest insights, Philippa, myself, or uHoo. uHoo does the indoor air quality monitoring devices. They've just come up with a new version with expanded features. So that'd be great for you if you can use that. I use it here at my home to check how good is my air quality inside and outside. And okay, we've got not yet that many of you clicked here. Maybe we can at least get 50%, and then we will move over to the Q&A. We've got some questions that have come in already in the chat box, and we will have the opportunity for more questions to be asked, either for the panel or for individual speakers. All right, great. Let me close the follow-up poll here. And we have, just to show you the results here, we have ladies first. Marla and Philippa have garnered a lot more interest, Jojo, than you and myself, but walang problema, as we say in the Philippines. We are okay with that. And let's go over to the questions. I mean, we had a great set of coverage here from the sustainable finance, great case studies, benefits of ESG investing, and then the focus on the health and the wellness in the buildings as part of the marriage of the ESG agenda. The first question that came in, or more of a statement, was focused on, hey, contactless might not work for people with visual impairment. And in general, we have to focus a bit more on people with disabilities when we look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that's a very important statement, I think, that's worthwhile sharing. Then we had one person asking about BDO and the green premium. Marla, is there a green premium involved in those green loans? Are they more expensive, or are they the same spread like general loans?
I'm not aware of any green premium that we have for our green loans. But we do have more stringent criteria used for them. Like, for example, one of the things that we've started to look at is the impact on gender in a community. If there's a wind farm proposal, for example, how does that impact the women in the community, their livelihood, their participation in the project? So it's not so much on money, but harder criteria, I guess. We do more due diligence.
All right, great. Philippa has to leave us at the hour. Philippa, you're okay for us to share your PDF of your presentation with anyone?
Absolutely. And I also wanted to say I'm on LinkedIn, as I'm sure we all are now, so happy to take any additional questions or talk to people that way. No problem. I apologize. We are finding this topic is very, very popular. So we're actually trying to grow our own health and wellbeing team. So I have to go and interview somebody now.
Yeah,
but,
I heard that as well, that you guys are rapidly and massively expanding. So I think people who are looking for partners in Europe on the ESG and real estate, definitely contact EVORA. They do a lot of amazing work.
We're also working for a number of key clients in other jurisdictions as well. So yes, happy to take any queries on that. And thank you all, a fascinating discussion as always. And it's been great to present with you all. And thank you, Matthias, for putting us all together. My pleasure, and Lilette from uHoo, who really pulled the strings together. But those of you that are still okay, please stay on. We're only, getting into interesting discussions and interesting Q&As. Marla, what I found was very fascinating as well was the fact that now the Banco Central
in the Philippines and in similar institutions in other countries are pushing the full holistic integration of sustainability and ESG into the core operations and the sustainable finance part. So we are getting a double whammy of the complete 360-degree greening of the banking system in the region. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely, Matthias. And they are following Europe's example in this sense because Europe is at the forefront of ESG integration and sustainable finance.
Excellent, excellent. So Jojo, from your perspective, have you seen any clear trends in the marketplace that maybe even consumers, whether they are residential or commercial consumers, are really looking for those ESG, green, efficient and healthy buildings and real estate?
Definitely. Even prior to the pandemic, there was that trend. Then, of course, because of the adjustment due to the pandemic, there are a lot. Just to name a few, because of the well in Oakland, of course, because of the shortage in housing, uh, people are moving, and of course, the concern for health and safety is a paramount thing for them. Then even in the Netherlands, again, the pronounced interest in well, as I said, countries and markets were locking down, right? But as soon as they were open, people were buying houses. They were going to bigger spaces. In New York, a lot of people were looking for tennis courts. I mean, New York, because it's it's really an urban center, a world center, right? In fact, a lot of our members in New York, they're experiencing sort of diaspora. They're going outside of New York, but people who are there, they're looking for wellness facilities, gyms, and tennis court was sort of like
Wow.
an uptick of 500%. And of course, in Georgia, they're looking for waterfronts. So really, of course, clean air, like what Marla and Philippa mentioned, but even just the space, the wellness. So there's a pronounced demand or in terms of preference. And we're these are not just because of the pandemic. I think there's a temporary and even long-term impact in terms of consciousness of what we want, what we need, and what would make us happy, as Philippa mentioned. So yes, there are clear trends on that one. Yes.
Yeah, I think those pictures that Philippa showed were very interesting, right? And if we think about it now, maybe for the first time in human history, a lot of us have, in theory, the possibility to work from the beach. It's okay to work from home now. And if you make the beach your home or a location on the seaside, then you can work from the beach, right? That was always the dream. So possibly a dream has come true if our work can stay completely remote and we can have good Wi-Fi in those beach resorts. I think that's still a challenge for us here in the Philippines. Most beach locations don't have the good high-speed Wi-Fi, but if we can accomplish that, then we would be there. Now we have a question that was shared here with me via Lilette, which was on the perspective of sustainable finance and architects. Philippa mentioned the role of architects in creating lasting value. I think, Marla, this question is directed at you. How do you think sustainable finance could increase the design quality in developments? What is the leverage sustainable finance has in increasing the design quality in developments?
So I would say that this is actually something that architects are challenged to do, and they welcome, the focus on sustainability. In terms of the finance side, we encourage it, particularly on innovation or innovative designs and use of materials that are sourced sustainably. So it's it's more of an impetus actually, and it feeds into more innovation in design quality in terms of projects, in terms of building green buildings, and even in housing. So I'm actually we're actually trying to build a house and trying to integrate green sustainable um, features into it, and our architect has been very happy in terms of really going the extra mile in finding ways to make that happen.
Hmm. I think as well we are reviving the passive design tradition that we have had in Southeast Asia. We had the Bahay Kubo as the most simplistic way, but it's very cool when you sleep there at night. You don't need aircon. In Malaysia, Singapore, the Malay kampung house, the village house on stilts with natural material like timber, and timber is a carbon sink. So you're already there at the net zero carbon, even with the building envelope. And you have the natural roof. The cement tile roof or the metal roof will absorb the heat and heat up the house, whereas the natural roofing material will absorb the heat and keep it cool. So these are some of the, I think, traditions as well that are being revived. And usually a green finance building will as well aim to find an architect, a team, or individual with these green design experiences that can then build those features in without extra costs. A lot of the green features can be built in. And we had here as well a comment coming into the chat box that was relating to that from Han Lo. Good to know that tenants are prepared to pay more for a green rated building. And this was as well the experience of my good friend Raymond Rufino, who has got several properties in BGC. I did a podcast with him once and he told me, we charge premium rental, but we can do it because we have top-notch green certified buildings. And they have as well recently been certified to the WELL health and safety rating, which was done in response to COVID. So these are all indicators. Then the question here is interesting to know if the cost of maintenance is higher than normal buildings. So that's the question here. Jojo, what's your take on that? A green building, a healthy building, will it cost more in maintenance?
No, in fact, based on the figures cited by IFC, by Green Building Council studies, in fact, they could, of course, the bulk of the cost would be power, water, of course, and other, well, of course, you have the manpower, but based on studies, green buildings can reduce recurring costs by 37%. So, so lower cost. And I think Hanlo's question was on the price and rent as well. The average given by IFC as high as well, on the average 8% higher rent. But in my experience with Zwillig building, we were and you mentioned, yes, the net buildings, the Rufinos, easily 10 even 15% premium compared to non-green buildings.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
the 8% cited by IFC sort of the average. So it's really higher rent, even higher selling prices for those who are selling. So yes, it's a compelling reason to pay more. But I even want to debate that one because you mentioned, and just to chime in on the architects, and if you plan, like again Zwillig and even the net buildings, if you plan your buildings, you can actually be at least equal to a traditional building or even safe, because I think green buildings would focus on, like Marla mentioned, sourcing materials locally, not only sustainably but locally. So even the architects, I talked to a number of architects. Yes, you mentioned the traditional design, even with the direction of the wind, the typhoons. So they're factoring all those in their designs. And yes, definitely, I think with the financing in place, it would spur more, more traditional sense, in the sense that not the traditional building, but the tradition way back, the more natured, like what
Mm.
Philippa mentioned,
Yeah, yeah.
nature-based designs.
Great, great. And those nature-based buildings, I mean,
If
modernly,
I may share,
yeah. Yes, please.
sorry, Matthias. I just wanted to share that for our own corporate center in Ortigas, for example, where I hold office, we have our own rainwater harvesting facility. And so we were able to recycle and reuse 60 million liters of water in 2019, for example. And we are 130% more energy efficient in our use of energy because of some features such as double glazed glass walls, which let light in but keep heat out. So in the in it evens itself out, and at some point you really get to see the savings that you get from using those materials. So maintenance is
Mm.
even better as years go by.
Great, excellent. This is a very, very good example. We have two more questions that are a bit more technical. One of them from Elmer. He actually sent that question in advance in the registration. And this is maybe for both of you. Do you support indoor air quality monitoring and improvement, if applicable, to fight COVID-19 transmission and make our homes, workplaces, and buildings safe? Do you support indoor air quality monitoring? What's your take on that, Jojo and Marla? Do you do it currently in your offices?
I'll go ahead, Marla. Sorry. Yes. Of course,
Yes, we do.
there are a lot of way. Well, there are a
Yeah.
lot of products and all. Yes, definitely. Of course. Sorry, I'm not the technical guy in terms of. But yes, we are looking into that. In fact, a lot of buildings are putting, especially because of the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, it has been already a trend. But because of the pandemic, it sort of accelerated. Yes. The quick answer is yes, but there would be a lot of technical details, and I'm not that guy. Sorry.
Yeah, actually, Elmar clarified here as well that DOLA has a limit of 1,000 ppm of carbon dioxide. That's the new DOLA specification for the Philippines. That means actually you should monitor it. Otherwise, you don't know what's going on. And from personal experience, I have my uHoo device since 3 years. I used it all over the Philippines. And even a LEED Platinum certified building is no guarantee that you have low CO2, because sometimes it's an open plan office. Later on, partitions have been built in for small meeting rooms, and those small meeting rooms might not get fresh air. I was in a LEED Platinum certified building, and the CO2 was over 2,000. I stayed in a 5-star hotel, and the CO2 was nearly 3,000 at night. I asked the facilities manager what's going on, and he told me, "Oh, don't tell anyone. We switch off the fresh air supply at night." Now,
Wow.
in times
Oh
of
my
COVID,
gosh.
we don't really want to do that anymore. But to actually know what's going on, we should be monitoring the air. And so far, I have seen a lot of companies see that as a luxury, but I think now it's a necessity because we need to know what's actually going on. And then we have a follow-up question here from Jeroen. It's for BDO. Are you looking into solutions that eliminate the COVID-19 virus that could possibly affect the clients and employees in the bank branches? And he mentions a technology called bipolar ionization that effectively removes the airborne virus. Actually, that's exactly what I have here in my home office. I use bipolar ionization as well as a way to improve the air quality and to reduce the airborne virus particles. So that's my personal recipe. Get yourself a uHoo air quality monitoring device and get yourself a bipolar ionization device to eliminate the rest of the nasties. So Marla, that question, what's your response from a BDO perspective on that?
So we currently have very strict safety protocols in all our facilities, both offices and particularly the branches, because there are they are the frontliners of the financial industry, and we have been on normal operations since June last year, 2020, to serve our customers. I'm not familiar with bipolar ionization. I'm not a technical person as well, similar to Jojo. But I do know that we have regular schedules for checking the air quality. And as Philippa said, you know, it's good when you see the people actually doing the checking the air quality. It's more reassuring. So I see that happening in our offices. And every evening, the facilities does a clean up of all the facilities and the branches. I can't describe it to you, but I know that they do they do spraying, and they do cleaning of surfaces, not just at night, but regularly throughout the day, and we see that as well. But
Yeah.
in terms of, you know, eliminating, you really cannot eliminate it. You can just take precautions so that people can safely go about their transactions if necessary, though we are also driving our customers online through the BPO mobile app and BDO Pay.
Yeah, I think the biggest risk is maybe not even the surfaces. The biggest risk is what is in the air that we don't see, and airborne particles that are moving around and floating around, especially in indoor environments where there's not enough air exchange. That's why it makes a lot of sense with Dole giving that limit of 1,000. But if you don't measure it, you don't know whether you're achieving it. So measurement is really the starting point. And then the additional technological advances, the new technologies like this bipolar ionization, can actually help to eliminate the particles in the room that people are in while they walk along. There are other technologies that you can only apply when no people are present, but that is the advantage of the bipolar ionization. And one of the things that my wife was surprised about, we eliminated our kitchen smell as well with the bipolar ionization. That was her biggest surprise, that suddenly the fish smell wasn't everywhere anymore after we installed it. So that's quite interesting. Now, maybe one topic that we touched on earlier as well was this whole issue of, you know, the beach vision, back to nature, biophilia, we kind of call it nowadays, in terms of an architectural design practice. I'm not sure whether he's still on. I saw my good friend Gregor Raymond from Malaysia here as well. He's a very well-known green building advisor there, and they did a project in Penang, Pyramid, I think it's called. It's the factory in the forest, and you should see pictures of that factory. So it's not just residential buildings. And the most striking thing that I remember from when his wife presented that case study at another webinar that I hosted a couple of months ago, the perception of the employees of their workplace had completely changed. The vision that Philippa was talking about, like, I want to go to the office because I feel good and I feel happy there, was now the reality at that factory. So many of the staff now said when they did the survey, we are so happy to work here because it feels like we work in nature. And that is maybe one big learning that we can take from this webinar here today, especially real estate, commercial real estate, office buildings need to work hard now for getting customers back in. How can, yeah, Gregors is still there. He's just commenting Pyramid Factory in the Forest. You can see the link there to the project case study. Fascinating case study of bringing nature and factory together. It's amazing what we can do nowadays if we have the right client and the right advisors and the right green financing. Boom, we have it all. So now office buildings, how can they make themselves attractive again? Especially those offices that might have lost their tenants, or the client has just shrink the size to half because he says, my workforce is now largely working from home. I need a smaller office footprint. How can you win those clients back? And I think installing a uHoo device in your office and showing healthy air quality to your customers or soon to become customers, even when a potential new tenant comes to you. Wouldn't it be very impressive if you show them on a screen there, hey guys, look at our real-time air quality monitoring. You are going to come into a healthy space. And do you see the little devices up there? That's our bipolar ionization in our aircon cassettes that are continuously eliminating volatile organic compounds and potential virus droplets in the air. We want you to be safe in here. We want your employees to be safe in here. We want to give you maximum productivity. I think so far we have not really used these technologies like real-time air quality monitoring for proactive customer acquisition. But I think in times of crisis, this is a big opportunity. So this is one of my takeaways from today. Hey, we can do a lot in enhancing the value of our properties by using IoT devices and technologies to bring visibility and deliver good air quality and bring that visibility and confidence back to our tenants, to our employees, to our customers for a back to full force, healthy future in our built environment.
Thanks, Matthias. Just to chime in, I discuss about new developments, but definitely because of the pandemic and because of the recalibration of office, even homes, yes, definitely there would be a lot of retrofitting, and it's an entire discussion altogether. But definitely clean air with all of this ionization and technology and this real-time monitoring, they would be on top of the list of a lot of people. So retrofitting is the way to go.
Excellent. Jojo, thanks so much. And maybe Marla, a final word of wisdom from your side.
Well, not really wisdom, but something exciting to share. BDO is actually building its Makati campus on Paseo de Rojas. I think I showed a photo in one of my earlier slides. We actually own the whole block there, and I've seen the studies by this group of British architects, Foster and Sons. They specialize in sustainable buildings. And the way I can best describe it is, not only does it include air quality and sustainable design, it's an entire block of gardens and buildings grew in the middle of the garden. So everyone will have a view. It's all surrounded by plants. It's really very much like what Philippa is describing as the ideal workplace for employees to go to. And this was even before the pandemic. We just had to stop our construction because of the pandemic's impact here in the Philippines. But we expect this to happen in the next 5 years. Have that whole campus, the biggest one and the best example showcase for sustainable building campus in Asia. So something to look forward to.
So hopefully, Marla, you can all invite us for the opening of that building, and we will meet up without face masks. We will have nice food, sustainably sourced food, locally farmed to table. We will have organic wine and beer, locally produced, and some soft drinks or some juices, freshly produced juices from an organic farm. And we will celebrate another milestone of a sustainable and healthy building in Metro Manila. And we will be back to normal, and we will see the good indoor air quality on the screens displayed in the buildings. I think we have some good future visions to look forward to. And I enjoyed our session today. Thanks everyone for contributing. Thank you, Marla, Jojo, and Philippa in absence, and Lilette in the background, making sure that everything runs smoothly. So this was the uHoo webinar on ESG, health, and the built environment. We really covered a lot of ground, and I'm inspired that the sustainable finance is coming along. The guys who are doing all the data and sales on properties, Jojo and his leading group of companies as well, providing the data. It's all moving in the right direction. We are experiencing a radical shift towards sustainability, eco-efficiency, decarbonization, and health and wellness. And that's the right path to go. And it will make us a happier community and a more resilient community in the future. Thanks, everyone. Wishing you a good evening and a lovely upcoming weekend. Stay safe and see you again next month. uHoo will send out the announcement of next month's webinar as and when we have finalized everything. Good night, everybody. Good night from the Philippines. Salamat.
Thank you, Matthias.